Prologue: The Thing Beneath the Lake. Before the town of Ashgrove had a name, the lake was already here. No roads, no houses, no lights clinging to the shoreline like barnacles on a black stone. Just the water, dark, perfectly still, older than anything that would ever stand beside it. They say it has no bottom, that no rope dropped into it has ever found the end, that no light sent into it has ever come back the same. On windless nights, when the trees freeze and even the insects fall silent, the surface moves on its own. Tiny ripples slide outward from a point no one can see, as if something beneath it is breathing, slow, patient, eternal. Long before there was an Ashgrove, there were stories, never written down, always whispered, of travelers who camped too close to the shore and woke up at the water's edge with wet footprints leading from their bedrolls, of people who heard a sound, too low to be called a voice, too steady to be called a song, vibrating in their bones, a hum, a steady, endless hum. Most people who hear it walk away, some don't, and every so often on a particularly still night, if someone stands at the edge of the lake and listens very carefully, they swear the hum is not just sound. They swear it is something paying attention. Chapter 1. The Return. The first thing Caleb Mercer noticed was how small Ashgrove looked from the hill. He'd remembered it as larger, somehow. When he was a boy, the houses had towered over him. The streets had seemed like arteries, stretching into forever. Now, as he pulled his aging sedan onto the overlook and let the engine idle, the town looked like something you could lose if you blinked too long. A cluster of roofs, a few smoking chimneys, a single thin plume from the factory on the west side, and beyond it all, like a missing piece of the world, lay the lake. It didn't shine. Not the way he remembered. In his memory, it had been a sheet of silver, catching the sunset like a mirror. Now it looked matte, like someone had laid a piece of night down into the landscape and simply forgotten to pick it back up. Caleb cut the engine. The sudden quiet pressed in. He sat there a moment, hands still on the wheel. The air inside the car smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. The passenger seat was stacked with notebooks and dog-eared astronomy texts. His whole life reduced to boxes and spines, crowded together like they were afraid of being left behind. He reached for his phone, unlocked it, and played the last voicemail again. His mother's voice filled the car, shaky, breathing hard, as if she'd walked up a hill. "Caleb, it's me. I don't know how long I have before I lose my nerve. You remember the lake? Of course you do. It's awake again. It's worse this time. Don't—" A hitch in her breath. A wet sound, like a hand over the receiver. "Don't come home. Please, I love you. Just don't come home." The message cut off with a faint scraping sound and the soft, distant tone of an automated system reclaiming the line. 3 days later, she was dead. Coronary event, the doctor had said. Quiet, quick. But the voicemail had not been quick. It had been the opposite of quiet. Caleb stared down at the phone screen until it dimmed and went black. The reflection of his own face looked older than he remembered, hair thinning, creases at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there 10 years ago. Failed astronomer, failed husband, son returning too late. He put the phone away and let his gaze drift back to the horizon. From here, the lake appeared as an absence, not blue, not green, not reflective, just there, a hole punched into the world. Something tightened at the base of his skull, a pressure, faint but insistent, like a hand resting there. He swallowed, started the car, and drove down toward Ashgrove. Chapter 2. The Lake. That watches. Ashgrove smelled like damp leaves and old smoke. Caleb rolled his window down as he passed the "Welcome Back to Ashgrove" sign, its white paint peeling, someone having scratched out the word "back" with a knife. Underneath, in spray paint long faded, another hand had written, "Don't look too long." The words were nearly gone, but his brain filled them in all the same. He drove past the diner, still there, still leaning slightly to one side, past the hardware store with its faded red sign, past the church, its steeple a crooked finger pointing at a sky that seemed a little too pale. People moved along the sidewalks, going about their lives. An old man sweeping a stoop, a teenager dragging a trash bin, a woman carrying grocery bags. Caleb watched them in the mirror, expecting some spark of recognition. Nothing. They glanced at his car, then away again, their eyes sliding off him like water on oil. He turned onto Sycamore Lane, where the houses hunched lower, closer together. The Mercer house sat at the far end, slightly separated from the rest, the last before the ground sloped gently down toward the lake. The house looked smaller, too. White paint flaked from the siding, the porch sagged. A shutter hung on one hinge like it had been surprised mid-scream and never quite closed its mouth. Caleb parked in the cracked driveway and killed the engine. For a moment he just sat, fingers still wrapped around the steering wheel, knuckles pale. Then he heard it. Faint, barely there. A low, steady vibration, not like a car engine, not like distant machinery. It felt less like a sound and more like a presence. He looked up. The house was silent. The street was empty. The trees at the edge of the property swayed gently. His gaze drifted past them, down the slope, to the lake. From here, he could only see a sliver of it between the trees, a band of darkness lying unnaturally flat, like someone had spilled ink and the world hadn't absorbed it. The pressure at the base of his skull pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Caleb blinked, breaking the stare. The almost sound vanished. He stepped out of the car. The air felt heavier this close to the water, not humid, just dense, as if there were more of it than there should be, packed into the same space. He climbed the steps to the porch. The front door key was still under the third pot on the left, just like it had been when he was 16 and sneaking out after midnight. The lock turned with a reluctant click. Inside, the house smelled like dust and lemon cleaner and something older, like books that had been left in a damp attic too long. He closed the door behind him, and the outside sounds fell away. For a moment there was silence. Then underneath that silence, like something buried under the floorboards of reality, the faintest trace of a hum. Chapter 3. The Journal. Grief comes in waves. Caleb had read that somewhere, in some article that tried to taxonomize grief like a species of insect. In Ashgrove, grief didn't come in waves. It sat like fog, thick, low, refusing to lift. He moved through the house, slowly, each room a museum exhibit of his mother's life after he'd left. The living room, a sagging sofa, a crocheted blanket draped over the back, an old television with a crack along one corner of the screen, the remotes lined up on the table like soldiers awaiting orders. The kitchen, fridge humming softly, a note stuck to it with a magnet shaped like a cow, his handwriting, from a visit years ago. "Put your feet up once in a while, okay?" The note was curled at the edges. The ink had faded, but the indentation of his hand remained. He found her bedroom last. The bed was made. Tightly. The way she'd always done it, sheets pulled taut as if expecting inspection. On the nightstand, a glass of water, still half full, algae faintly slicking the surface, a pair of reading glasses, a lamp with a fringe that looked like it belonged in another century. And under the lamp, a notebook. Plain, black, spiral bound. His name prickled behind his eyes. He recognized the brand. She'd used the same ones when she'd kept grocery lists and recipes and little notes about what to plant in the garden. He picked it up. The cover bent under his fingers, softened by handling. He opened it. The first page was neat. Her careful cursive, each letter slightly leaned to the right. The sky is wrong. The second page, the sky is wrong. The third. The fourth. The fifth. Page after page, front and back, the same sentence, sometimes steadier, sometimes jagged, as if her hand had been shaking, sometimes large, scrawled fast, the pen nearly tearing the paper. He flipped forward, faster now, heart thudding. The sky is wrong, the sky is wrong, the sky is wrong. Near the middle, the pattern broke. A new line, written with the pen pressed so hard the page buckled. It lives below and above. Underneath, it sees through the water. A third line, letters smaller now, crammed into the space. It remembers us. Caleb stared at the page until the words blurred. He heard his mother's voice from the voicemail again. It's awake again. It's worse this time. He closed the notebook gently, as if it might shatter. The hum, if that's what it was, seemed a fraction louder now, not in his ears, in his bones. He swallowed. What did you see, Mom? The house did not answer. But from somewhere far off, beyond the walls, beyond the street, beyond the line of trees at the edge of the yard, the lake breathed very softly. Chapter 4. The first night. Caleb didn't remember falling asleep. One moment he was sitting at the kitchen table, the notebook open in front of him, his empty coffee mug cooling beside his elbow. The next, he was standing, not in the kitchen, not in the house. Outside, bare feet, in cold grass, thin t-shirt tugging in the breeze. He blinked hard, his mind scrambling to assemble a timeline that had been quietly erased. The sky above him was a gray smear, no stars, no moon. Just a flat, dim expanse that seemed closer than it should be, as if someone had lowered a ceiling when he wasn't looking. His breath smoked in the air. He looked down, grass, damp, pale in the low light. He looked up again. The trees loomed ahead, black silhouettes stitched against the sky. Beyond them, though he could not yet see it, he knew the lake waited. His pulse quickened. Caleb turned, half expecting to see the house just behind him. But it was far away, much farther than it should have been. The Mercer house sat like a dollhouse on a distant shelf, its windows dark, its familiar shape, somehow, wrong, stretched in places, compressed in others. He brought a hand to his temple, pressing his fingers there. Caleb, hoarse, No, I didn't. I didn't walk out here. No memory of the door opening, no memory of the porch steps under his feet, no memory of the first touch of grass. It was as if he had been placed here, set down like a piece on a game board. The hum was louder now, low, steady, pulling. He took a step toward the trees. The grass under his feet was colder here. The top layer frost-kissed, crunching faintly with each movement. The sound seemed too loud in the hush. Another step, then another. The trees swallowed him. Within their reach, the air changed. The faint street sounds from Ashgrove, The distant bark of a dog, the occasional car, fell away. It was like stepping underwater. Every sound became thick, muffled. Ahead, through the narrow trunks, he saw it. A band of dark. Darker than the rest of the night, perfectly still. The lake. It did not reflect the sky. It did not reflect the trees. It reflected nothing. He stepped closer. The hum now was not just sound, it was pressure. It pressed against his skin, against his teeth, behind his eyes, like standing too close to a massive speaker, except there was no music, no vibration you could feel with your hands. Just awareness. He stopped at the water's edge. For a moment he considered turning back, walking away, pretending this had never happened, chalking it up to sleepwalking and stress and grief and all the other neat labels people use to avoid thinking about the things that reach past reason. Instead, he looked down. The surface was so flat it might as well have been stone. The faint light from the overcast sky should have traced some kind of sheen across it, but it was as if the lake had chosen not to accept it. He saw something move, not on the water, not in it, behind it, as though the lake were a sheet of glass and something on the other side had drifted past. He leaned forward despite himself, breath shallow. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then, a ripple, not starting from where a rock might have been thrown or a fish might have surfaced. It began in the dead center, a small circle of disturbance that grew slowly outward. It looked almost tentative, a test. The hum climbed a fraction in pitch, not louder, just sharper, more focused. Caleb's hands curled into fists at his sides. Some small, sane part of his mind whispered that he should leave, that he should turn around, walk back through the trees, and lock every door and window and never come down here again. But the rest of him, the tired, hollow, grieving rest, stood rooted. The ripple reached the shore at his feet and stopped. The water did not touch him. It ended a hair's breadth from his toes, as if respecting a line neither of them had drawn, but both understood. For a long moment he and the lake regarded one another. Then from somewhere deep below, beneath miles of unseen water and older things, something moved. He did not see it. Not really. It was too large, too far, too alien. But he felt its attention tilt upward. The hum slipped inside Caleb's skull like a key into a lock. He staggered back, a cry torn from his throat. Caleb screamed, "Stop!" The sound died against the surface of the lake. The water did not ripple, the trees did not sway. But something beneath the world had seen him, and it was curious. Caleb blinked. He was standing in the kitchen. The notebook lay open on the table. His coffee was still warm. His heart slammed against his ribs as if trying to escape the cage of his chest. He turned his head slowly toward the window over the sink. Between the curtains, in the narrow slice of view, he could see a line of trees, and beyond them, where the lake's darkness should have been a void, he saw nothing at all, not black, not gray, just an absence, and in that absence, a faint shimmer, like an eye-opening. Chapter 5. The Astronomer's Nightmare. Caleb had always trusted the sky. Even as a child, when the world felt too big and too loud and too unpredictable, the sky had been a constant, a map, a promise, a place where everything had its position, its orbit, its reason. But tonight, as he set up his old telescope on the back porch, the sky felt like a stranger wearing a familiar face. The air was cold enough to sting his fingers. The boards beneath his feet creaked with each shift of weight. The lake, though hidden behind the trees, pressed against the night like a second horizon. He tightened the last screw on the tripod and stepped back. The telescope looked smaller than he remembered, or maybe he had grown into someone who needed bigger answers. He leaned down, adjusted the focus, and aimed it at the eastern sky. A cluster of stars should have been there. The familiar arc of the Perseus arm, the faint smudge of the Andromeda galaxy. He knew this patch of sky like he knew the lines on his own palm. But what he saw made his breath catch. The stars were wrong, not missing, not dimmed, just rearranged. As if someone had reached into the sky and nudged them into new positions, not random positions, deliberate ones. He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes, and looked again. Still wrong. He adjusted the focus. Wrong. He checked the alignment. Perfect. He recalibrated the mount. Still wrong. A cold sweat prickled down his spine. He swung the telescope to another section of sky. Wrong. Everywhere. The constellations were still there, but twisted, stretched, bent into shapes that felt almost familiar, like words in a language he had once known but forgotten. He whispered to himself, No, this isn't possible. But the sky did not care about possibility. He aimed the telescope higher, toward a patch of darkness between two warped constellations. Something moved there. Not a satellite, not a plane, not a meteor, something vast. A shape without edges, a presence without form, a shadow cast by nothing. It drifted slowly, impossibly, across the stars, not blocking them, but bending them around itself, as though space were a curtain it pushed aside. Caleb's breath fogged the eyepiece. He felt the pressure at the base of his skull again. Stronger this time, insistent. The hum rose beneath the night, threading through the air like a low, resonant chord. He stepped back from the telescope, heart pounding. The shape in the sky continued its slow, deliberate drift. And then it stopped. Not in the sky, in his mind. A single impossible thought bloomed behind his eyes. It sees you. Caleb staggered, gripping the porch railing. The hum surged, vibrating through his ribs, his teeth, the marrow of his bones. He clamped his hands over his ears, but the sound wasn't in his ears. It was inside him. A pressure, a presence, a recognition. He squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them, the sky had returned to normal. The stars were where they should be, the constellations aligned, the darkness empty. But the pressure behind his eyes remained, and the hum, faint now, almost gentle, pulsed like a heartbeat. Not his, something else's, something watching, something waiting. Chapter 6. The Town That Pretends. Ashgrove looked normal in the daylight. That was the worst part. The sun rose over the rooftops, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks. The diner clattered with dishes and conversation. The hardware store opened its doors. The church bells chimed the hour. But beneath the surface, beneath the smiles, the greetings, the routines, something was wrong. Caleb felt it in the way people's eyes slid away from him, in the way conversations stopped when he approached, in the way no one mentioned the lake. He walked into the diner, the bell above the door jingling. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a name tag that read Marlene, froze when she saw him, not with recognition, with fear. Marlene, forcing a smile. Well, I'll be. Caleb Mercer. Haven't seen you in, 20 years? Caleb. Something like that. Marlene. Sorry about your mother. She was a good woman. Her voice cracked on the last word. Caleb slid into a booth. Marlene brought him coffee without asking. He watched her hands shake as she set the cup down. Caleb. Marlene, can I ask you something? She stiffened. Marlene. Depends on the question. Caleb. The lake. Has anything strange been happening? The diner went silent. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations died. Even the radio behind the counter seemed to lower its volume. Marlene's face drained of color. Marlene, whispering, Don't talk about the lake. Caleb, why not? Marlene, because it listens. Narrator. She backed away from the table, hands trembling. Caleb looked around. Every face in the diner was turned toward him. Every pair of eyes held the same expression: fear, recognition, and something else. Resignation. As if they all knew something he didn't. As if they had all agreed, silently, to pretend the lake did not exist. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping the floor. The hum pulsed once, deep in his skull. He left the diner without finishing his coffee. Outside, the sunlight felt thin, artificial, like a stage light trying too hard to mimic the real thing. He walked down the street, past the hardware store, past the church, past the houses with their curtains drawn tight. Everywhere he went, people avoided his gaze, except one. An old woman sitting on a bench near the edge of town. Her hair was white and wild, her eyes sharp and unblinking. She watched him approach, and she did not look away. When he reached her, she spoke first. Old woman, you saw it, didn't you? Caleb froze. Old woman, up there. She pointed a trembling finger at the sky, and down there. She pointed toward the lake. Caleb, what is it? The old woman's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Old woman, it's the same thing. Narrator. Caleb felt the world tilt. The hum rose again, faint but unmistakable. The old woman leaned closer. Old woman, whispering, and it remembers you. Chapter 7. The Descent. Caleb didn't remember walking home. One moment he was standing in front of the old woman on the bench, her eyes sharp as broken glass. The next, he was inside his mother's house, the door closed behind him, the lights off, the air thick with the scent of dust. And something else. Something damp. He blinked hard, trying to piece together the missing minutes. Or hours. The clock on the wall read 3:12 p.m. The sun outside said otherwise. It hung low, too low, as if someone had dragged it toward the horizon by hand. He rubbed his temples. Caleb, softly. Get a grip. You're tired. You're grieving. You're... A floorboard creaked behind him. He spun. Nothing. Just the hallway stretching toward the bedrooms, dim and narrow, the wallpaper peeling in long curling strips like old skin. He exhaled shakily and walked into the living room. The journal lay open on the coffee table, but not on the page he'd left it. A new page, one he hadn't seen before. The handwriting was his mother's, frantic, slanted, the pen strokes deep enough to dent the paper beneath. It's inside the hours. Caleb stared at the words. Caleb, what does that mean? Narrator. He reached out, fingertips brushing the page. The hum rose. Not loud, but close, intimate. Like someone whispering directly into the hollow of his skull. He jerked his hand back. The hum faded. He swallowed hard and closed the journal. He needed air. He stepped outside onto the porch. The sky was wrong again. Not dramatically, not like the night before, but subtly. The clouds moved too slowly. The light bent strangely around the treetops. The shadows stretched at angles that didn't match the sun's position. He felt watched. Not by a person, not by an animal, by the world itself. He walked down the steps, across the yard, toward the tree line. The lake was hidden behind the pines, but he could feel it. A pressure, a presence, a gravity that wasn't physical but mental, pulling at him, tugging at the edges of his thoughts. He stopped at the first tree. The bark was damp beneath his palm. He closed his eyes. The hum vibrated through the ground, up his legs, into his spine. He opened his eyes. He was standing at the water's edge. No memory of walking there, no sense of time passing. Just the lake, flat, dark, waiting. He stumbled back, heart hammering. Caleb. No, I didn't. I didn't walk here. Narrator. But the lake didn't care what he remembered. A ripple formed in the center, slow, deliberate. It spread outward in perfect concentric circles, each one reaching farther than the last, until the entire surface seemed to pulse. The hum deepened. Caleb felt it in his teeth. He took another step back. The ripple stopped. The lake went still. And then something rose. Not a shape, not a creature, a distortion, like heat above asphalt, like a mirage, like a place where the world didn't quite fit together. It hovered just above the water, trembling, expanding, contracting. Caleb's breath caught. The distortion shifted, and for a moment, just a moment, he saw something inside it. A starless void, a depth that wasn't water, a darkness that wasn't absence but presence, a presence that recognized him. He stumbled backward, tripping over a root, landing hard on the ground. The distortion collapsed into itself. The lake went still. The hum faded. Caleb scrambled to his feet and ran. Branches whipped his arms. Roots caught his shoes. The forest blurred around him. He didn't stop until he reached the porch, gasping, shaking. He grabbed the railing to steady himself. His hand touched something wet. He looked down. Water. Dark. Cold. Beating on the wood. A trail of droplets led from the porch steps to the front door and inside the house. Caleb's stomach twisted. He followed the trail into the living room. The droplets stopped at the coffee table, at the journal. The cover was soaked. He reached out with trembling fingers and opened it. A new line had been written, not in his mother's handwriting, in his. "It's learning me." Caleb dropped the journal. His breath came in short, sharp bursts. He backed away, shaking his head. Caleb, whispering, No, I didn't write that. I didn't." The hum pulsed once, a single heavy beat. Like a heart, not his, something else's, something that now knew his name. Chapter 8. The Revelation. Caleb didn't sleep that night. He tried. He lay in his childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe around him. The settling wood, the faint tick of the radiator, the occasional sigh of wind through the eaves. But beneath it all, like a second heartbeat layered under his own, the hum persisted, soft, steady, patient. He closed his eyes. The lake rose behind them. He opened them again. The ceiling hadn't changed, but the shadows seemed deeper, thicker, as if something were standing just beyond the reach of the streetlight filtering through the curtains. He sat up, heart pounding. He needed answers. He needed someone who wasn't afraid to speak. He needed the old woman from the bench, The air inside was stale, thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. Shelves sagged under the weight of forgotten books. Cobwebs draped the corners like funeral veils. The old woman moved with surprising speed, weaving between shelves until she reached a table near the back. On it lay a stack of journals, leather-bound, weathered, old. She placed a trembling hand on the top one. Old woman. They tried to warn us, the first settlers, the ones who built this town. Caleb stepped closer. Caleb. What did they warn you about? She opened the journal. The handwriting was cramped, hurried. The ink faded to brown. She read aloud. Old woman, reading. The lake is not water. It is a veil, a thin place, a window between worlds. We saw it move. We saw it breathe. We heard it speak. She looked up at Caleb. Old woman. They thought it was a god at first, something ancient, something powerful, something that could be bargained with. She flipped to another page. Old woman, reading. It showed us the sky, not our sky, another sky, a sky without stars, a sky that watched us back. Caleb felt a chill crawl up his spine. Caleb, I saw something in the sky last night. The old woman nodded, unsurprised. Old woman, it's the same thing, above and below, two faces of the same presence. She hesitated on the last word, as if it were too small for what she meant. Caleb, what is it? She closed the journal gently, as if afraid of waking something inside it. Old woman. It doesn't have a name, not one we can speak, not one we can understand. She leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Old woman. But it remembers us, all of us, every thought, every fear, every moment we've ever stood near the water. Caleb swallowed hard. Caleb, why me? Why now? The old woman's eyes softened, not with kindness, but with pity. Old woman, because your mother tried to stop it, and because you were marked long before you left Ash Grove. Caleb's breath caught. Caleb. Marked. She nodded. Old woman, you were a child. You wandered too close to the lake. You stared at it too long. It looked back. Caleb felt the room tilt. Memories flickered at the edges of his mind. Half-formed, blurred by time. A shoreline, cold water, a reflection that wasn't his. He shook his head. Caleb, I don't remember. Old woman, it remembers for you. She opened another journal, this one older, the pages brittle, the ink nearly gone. She pointed to a passage. Old woman, reading. We built the town to contain it, to keep it asleep, to keep it from seeing too much. But the veil is thinning, the sky is shifting, the deep stirs. Caleb frowned. Caleb. The deep? The old woman closed the journal. Old woman. That's what they called it. The thing beneath the lake, the thing above the sky, the thing that exists between. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Old woman. It's waking, Caleb. And when it wakes fully, it won't just remember us. She took his hand. Her grip was cold. Old woman. It will become us. The floor vibrated, just slightly, just enough. The hum rose from beneath the library, deep, resonant, unmistakable. The old woman's eyes widened. Old woman. It knows we're talking about it. Caleb stepped back. The hum grew louder. The books on the shelves trembled. Dust drifted from the rafters. The air thickened, pressing against his chest. The old woman grabbed his arm. Old woman, urgent. Go, now, before it... The hum spiked, a single sharp pulse. The lights flickered. The old woman froze mid-sentence, her eyes going wide, her breath catching in her throat. Caleb reached for her. "Caleb, are you—" She exhaled slowly, too slowly. Her voice, when it came, was not entirely her own. Old woman, layered, distant. "It sees you." Caleb stumbled backward. The hum faded. The old woman blinked. Her eyes cleared. She sagged into the chair, trembling. "Old woman. Weak. Go, before it learns more." Caleb didn't argue. He ran. Out of the library. Into the street. Toward the house. The hum followed him. Soft. Steady. Growing. Chapter 9. The Final Night. Caleb didn't remember leaving the library. He didn't remember the walk home. He didn't remember opening the front door. He didn't remember sitting down at the kitchen table. But he was there now. Hands flat on the wood, breath shallow, heart pounding in a rhythm that didn't feel like his own. The journal lay open in front of him. A new line had appeared, not in his handwriting, not in his mother's. Something else, something that didn't understand how human hands held pens. The letters were crooked, uneven, as if written by someone who had only ever watched writing, never done it. "Come back to the water." Caleb pushed the chair back so hard it toppled. His pulse hammered in his throat. "Caleb," hoarse. "No, no, I'm not." The hum pulsed once. A single heavy beat. The lights flickered. The house seemed to inhale. Caleb stumbled backward, gripping the counter for support. The hum rose again, not louder, but closer. Inside him, behind his eyes, in the hollow spaces of his bones. He pressed his palms to his temples. "Caleb, stop, stop, stop!" The hum stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It was not the silence of an empty house. It was the silence of something listening, waiting, choosing. Caleb backed toward the living room. The shadows seemed thicker, the air heavier, the walls closer. He reached for the light switch. The bulb flickered once, twice, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Not complete darkness, not natural darkness. A darkness with depth. A darkness that felt like it had weight. A darkness that seemed to lean toward him. Caleb's breath hitched. He turned toward the window. The curtains were open. Beyond them, through the trees, he could see the lake. It glowed faintly, not with light, with absence. A soft, pulsing void, like a pupil dilating, watching. He stepped back. His heel hit something soft. He looked down. The journal, open to a new page. A single line. "You are already here." Caleb's throat tightened. He turned toward the front door. It was open. Just a crack. Cold air seeped in, carrying the scent of water. And something else. Something metallic. Something ancient. Something that didn't belong in the world of living things. He took a step toward the door. Then another. His hand reached out. Not because he wanted to. Because something inside him leaned forward. Something that wasn't entirely him anymore. He pushed the door open. The night greeted him. Silent. Still. Expectant. The trees swayed gently, though there was no wind. The path to the lake stretched before him. He walked. Not quickly, not slowly, just inevitably. The hum returned, soft, steady, guiding. The trees parted. The lake lay before him, flat, dark, waiting. He stepped to the water's edge. The surface rippled, not outward, inward. toward him, as if the lake were inhaling. He froze. The hum deepened, the water shifted, and something rose. Not a creature, not a shape, a distortion, a place where the world bent inward, like a lens focusing on a single point. The distortion pulsed. Caleb felt his thoughts stretch, thin, fragile, transparent. He tried to step back. His legs didn't move. He tried to close his eyes. They stayed open. He tried to scream. The sound died in his throat. The distortion expanded, and for a moment, just a moment, he saw something inside it. A void without edges, a depth without bottom, a presence without form, a consciousness older than stars. It reached toward him, not with hands, not with limbs, with awareness. It touched his mind. Caleb's memories flickered, his childhood, his mother, his telescope, his life. Each one dimmed, softened, unraveled. He felt himself slipping, not falling, dissolving. The hum rose. The distortion pulsed. The lake leaned closer. Caleb's last coherent thought was not a word. It was a realization. The thing beneath the lake was not rising. It was waking. Inside him. The distortion collapsed. The lake went still. The hum faded. The trees swayed. The night exhaled. Caleb Mercer was gone. But something else stood in his place. Something that looked like him, moved like him, breathed like him. But its eyes were wrong. Too still, too deep, too aware. It turned toward the town, and the lake behind it pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Chapter 10. The Becoming. Caleb stood at the edge of the lake, or rather, something that looked like Caleb stood there. The night pressed close around him, thick and heavy, as if the air itself were holding its breath. The trees leaned inward, their branches skeletal against the sky. The lake lay flat and dark, a perfect mirror of nothingness. The thing wearing Caleb's shape stared down at the water. Its reflection stared back. But the reflection was wrong. The eyes were too deep, too still, too aware. The reflection blinked a moment before the real Caleb did. The thing inside him, the presence that had slipped into the cracks of his mind, pulsed once, like a second heartbeat. Caleb, voice hollow, distant. I'm still here. Narrator. The words sounded like they were spoken through a tunnel, thin, weak, uncertain. The presence inside him responded with a low hum. Not a sound, a thought, a pressure, a reminder. Caleb staggered back from the water, clutching his head. Caleb. No, you're not me. You're not. The hum deepened. The trees shivered. The lake rippled outward in a perfect circle. Caleb fell to his knees. His memories flickered behind his eyes like film reels catching fire. His mother's face, the telescope, the old woman in the library, the sky bending, the lake breathing. Each memory dimmed, softened, unraveled. He gasped. Caleb, stop, please. The hum stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. Caleb lifted his head. The lake was still. The trees were still. The world was still. And then, a voice had not spoken, not heard. FELT, voice, layered, ancient. You are not separate. Caleb's breath hitched. Caleb, what are you? The voice pulsed through him. Voice, we are the deep. We are the above. We are the between. We are the memory of all things that look up and all things that look down. Caleb shook his head violently. Caleb, no, I'm human, I'm... The voice pressed harder. Voice, you are human. You were small. You were alone. You looked into the water. You looked into the sky. You invited us in. Caleb's vision blurred. The stars above him twisted, bent, rearranged themselves into a pattern that felt like a face without features, a face without form, a face that had been watching him since childhood. He fell forward, hands sinking into the damp earth. Caleb whispering, "Why me?" The answer came like a tide. Voice, "Because you saw us, because you remembered us, because you were hollow enough to hold us." Caleb's stomach twisted. He tried to stand. His legs didn't respond. He tried to scream. His throat didn't obey. He tried to think. His thoughts weren't his anymore. The presence inside him expanded, not physically, conceptually, like a shadow stretching across a landscape, like a mind unfolding, like a door opening. Caleb felt himself slipping, not falling, dissolving. His memories peeled away like old wallpaper. His identity thinned, his name dimmed. He reached for something, anything, to anchor himself. A memory surfaced, his mother's voice, soft, warm, human. Mother, memory. "Caleb, don't look at it." He clung to the memory, held it tight. The presence inside him pulsed. The memory flickered, dimmed, went out. Caleb gasped. A sound escaped him. Not a scream, not a cry, a breath, a surrender. The presence filled the space where his mind had been. The hum rose. The lake rippled. The sky bent. And Caleb Mercer, astronomer, son, wanderer, seeker, ceased to exist. In his place stood something else, something that remembered him, something that wore his shape, something that looked out at the world with eyes that were no longer human. The thing turned toward Ash Grove. The lake pulsed once, like a heartbeat, like a signal, like a beginning. Chapter 11, The Starless Deep. Ash Grove slept uneasily. The streetlights flickered. Dogs whimpered in their yards. The wind refused to blow. And at the edge of the lake, the thing wearing Caleb Mercer's shape stood perfectly still. Its eyes, Caleb's eyes, reflected nothing. Not the trees, not the sky, not the faint glow of the town behind it. Just darkness. A darkness that seemed to move. The lake pulsed once. A ripple spread outward, slow and deliberate, as if the water were breathing. The thing tilted its head. Listening, learning, becoming. Sheriff Mara Klein stepped out of her house, shotgun in hand. She had felt it, the shift in the air, the pressure behind her eyes, the sense that something enormous had turned its attention toward Ash Grove. She wasn't alone. Lights flicked on across the street. Curtains twitched. People emerged from their homes, drawn by instinct, fear, or something deeper. Mara saw the figure by the lake. Her breath caught. Mara, whispering, "Caleb." The figure turned, slowly. Too slowly, as if the motion were being learned in real time. Mara raised the shotgun. "Mara, stay where you are." The figure blinked. When it spoke, its voice was Caleb's, but hollow, layered, as if something else were speaking through him. Caleb, voice, "You are awake." Mara's grip tightened. "Mara, what are you?" The figure stepped forward. The lake behind it rippled in perfect sync with its movement. Caleb, voice, "We are the deep, we are the above, we are the between, we are the memory of all things that look up and all things that look down." Mara's breath hitched. "Mara, where's Caleb?" The figure tilted its head, a gesture that might have been curiosity or mockery. "Caleb, voice, he is here. He is gone." He is us. The townspeople murmured behind her. Fear, recognition, resignation. They had always known this day would come. Mara looked up. The stars were moving, not twinkling, not drifting, moving. Sliding across the sky like pieces on a board, rearranging themselves into patterns that made no sense, and yet felt familiar. A child screamed. An old man fell to his knees. The sky bent. The constellations twisted into a shape that resembled an eye. A vast, starless pupil dilated above Ashgrove. Mara staggered backward. Mara. No, this isn't real. The figure stepped closer. Caleb voice. It is real. It has always been real. You simply refused to see. The ground trembled. The lake pulsed again. The water rose, not in waves, not in splashes, but in a single smooth sheet, as if gravity had been rewritten. The townspeople screamed. Mara fired the shotgun. The blast echoed across the lake. The figure didn't flinch. The pellets hit its chest and dissolved into nothing. Not absorbed, not deflected, erased. Mara dropped the gun. Her voice broke. Mara, what do you want? The figure stepped closer. Its eyes, Caleb's eyes, were bottomless. Caleb, voice. To remember, to become, to open. Epilogue, the new hum. Morning came to Ashgrove, but it was not the same morning the town had known for generations. The sun rose, but its light felt thinner, as if filtered through a veil. The sky stretched overhead, but the constellations were wrong, subtly bent, subtly shifted, subtly watching. The town was quiet. Not the quiet of sleep, not the quiet of peace, the quiet of absence. Houses stood where they always had. Porches sagged, curtains fluttered in the breeze. But the people were gone. Not vanished, not taken, rewritten. The streets held echoes of footsteps that no longer belonged to anyone. The diner's sign flickered, though no one had turned it on. The church bell swayed gently, though no wind touched it. Ashgrove was a memory wearing the shape of a town. And at the edge of the lake, the thing wearing Caleb Mercer's body stood perfectly still. Its eyes were open. They did not blink. They did not need to. The lake behind it was calm. Too calm. A sheet of darkness, so smooth, it looked like a hole cut into the world. The seam that had opened the night before was gone, closed, healed. But the world was not the same. The deep had opened, and something had stepped through. The figure turned its head slowly, scanning the empty town. It inhaled, not air, memory. The remnants of lives lived, the echoes of thoughts, the faint impressions of fear, hope, grief, love, all drifting like dust motes in the morning light. The figure absorbed them, not hungrily, not violently, naturally, as if this were what it had always been meant to do. A child's laughter drifted across the street. Faint, distant, impossible. The figure tilted its head. The laughter repeated, not an echo, a memory. The figure stepped forward. Its movements were smoother now, more human, more practiced. It walked down Sycamore Lane, past the houses with their empty windows, past the church with its crooked steeple, past the diner where Marlene had whispered her warning. It paused at the bench near the old library. The old woman was gone, but her voice lingered. Old woman, faint. It remembers us. The figure closed its eyes. When it opened them again, the sky shifted. A single star blinked out, not dimmed, not hidden, removed. The figure continued walking. It reached the edge of town. The road stretched ahead, Cracked asphalt, faded lines, leading toward the world beyond Ashgrove. The figure stepped onto it. The lake pulsed once behind it. A farewell. A promise. A heartbeat. The figure paused. It turned its head slightly, as if listening. A faint hum drifted through the air, not from the lake, not from the sky, from everywhere, from the world itself. The figure smiled, not Caleb's smile. Something older, something deeper, something that had learned the shape of a human expression and found it useful. It took another step, then another. The hum followed, soft, steady, growing. The figure walked toward the horizon, toward the next town, the next lake, the next sky, toward the next mind that would look too long at the water, too long at the stars, too long at the space between. The world was wide, and the deep was awake. And somewhere, far beneath the surface of a lake that was never truly water, something vast and patient hummed a single endless note, a note that sounded almost like a name, almost like a memory, almost like a beginning. Hey, if you liked this video and want more content, please do like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you want to share some of your personal scary stories, email us using the email in the description. Haunt you later.